Alright, so Joe Rogan is a complete idiot, and he's continuing to prove this as he goes in his down spiral of madness when it comes to coronavirus. He really started to go downhill when he moved to Texas. He started saying insane things about coronavirus. He's been pushing misleading information about the vaccine, about coronavirus in general. But what you're going to see here is a clip where almost everything he says is wrong. He's going to talk about here about freedom and how it's being, limited now, and this is something, we've never seen. You don't know history if you're supporting vaccine passports, right? You don't know history. You don't know American history. It's fucking hilarious. The guy is such an idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. And so I have a slew of facts I'm going to show you to prove why he's wrong about almost everything he says. But, this is going to piss you off when you watch it.
Can't do what you want to do unless you do what I want you to do. I mean, Don Lemon was talking about that openly on CNN.
Yeah.
Don't have a vaccine? Can't go to the supermarket. Don't have a vaccine? Can't go to work.
It's so strange that people want to say things like that. Like, that's the thing that blows me away. Why do people want to...
Because they're dumb.
They're dumb.
They're dumb. They don't understand history. They don't understand
Right.
human beings. They don't understand human nature. They don't understand the history of every single country that's ever existed other than the United States. Up until 1776, every fucking country that has ever existed was run by dictators.
Right.
All of them. This is the first one where you had elected officials. This is the first experiment in self-government that actually worked, and it created the greatest superpower the world's ever known. It created the greatest cultural machine, the greatest machine of art and creativity and innovation right fucking here. And how did it do that? It did it through freedom. Because when you give people freedom, you let people do whatever the fuck they want to do, they actually find ways to succeed and grow and thrive. But as soon as you put the boots to them, as soon as you tell them, you have to do this or you can't do that, you have to listen to me, now you have a mini dictator. You have one step away from a king. You have a one step closer. You're moving one step closer to dictatorship. That's what the fuck is happening. That's what's going to happen with a vaccine passport. That's what's going to happen if they close borders. You can't enter New York City unless you have your papers. You can't go to here unless you have that. You can't get on a plane unless you do what I say. And people say, whoa, it's all about protecting people from the... No, it's not. It's not, because we've shown this is a fact. Just a couple of months ago, the idea of a breakthrough case was unheard of. Nobody heard of anybody catching COVID that had a vaccine, right? That was the whole idea. You get a vaccine, you don't have to worry about it. Now we know not only do you get it, but you can spread it. And some people have died. Apparently, it's a small number. I don't know what the numbers are, but I know that most people who get vaccinated, when they do have the disease, they have a better time of it than the people who are unvaccinated. But where are the people out there calling for people to get healthy? Where are the people out there calling for people to lose weight?
So he starts out with this newly gained libertarian, demented idea of freedom, and he's misrepresenting what freedom is and what freedom has always been in American history. Freedom has never been just freedom to do whatever you want. When someone says it's a free country, they're wrong. It's not a fully free country. That's why there are laws on the books that will throw you in jail if you don't follow the law. And it's very commonly understood your freedom ends when it impinges upon someone else's freedom, and when you're dealing with infectious diseases, a literal pandemic. This is the main issue, right? This isn't freedom in that you can just harm yourself. In that situation, it's very different. But when you are using your freedom to fuck other people over, your freedom has ended at that point. So that's very commonly understood. That's why you go to jail for impinging upon other people's freedoms and liberties to do what they want. You can't steal from people. You can't harm people. You can't kill people. Okay? Otherwise, your liberty is taken away. This is commonly understood. It's a very dumb, demented idea, libertarian idea that he's gotten. He sounds like Alex Jones, so I can tell he's been talking to Alex Jones, especially when you hear the, 1776 stuff. He's obviously been talking a lot to Alex Jones. He's gone on the dumbass juice, obviously, off all the HGH, I guess. So he's completely wrong on that. That's completely untrue. The weird thing he says about understanding humans and nature, what you mean that humans die from infectious diseases and vaccines are incredibly important and they save people's lives. I don't even know what that means, humans and nature. If anything, what that should tell you is, oh shit, like humans die from diseases. That's why vaccines are so important. So that doesn't make any sense. But just to look at some of the stuff, right? Because he's saying you don't know history. America's always been about freedom. But he's such an idiot. He doesn't know shit about U.S. history. If you look back at U.S. history, the way that the U.S. government looked at freedom as a whole is way less than how the courts look at it now. The government and the country was much more willing to impinge upon people's freedoms, like freedom of speech and stuff like that, in cases where nowadays people will be like, whoa, that's way too far. So his idea of that is dead wrong. But also, the idea of vaccine passports, the idea where employers going to a sports game or something like that, you have to be vaccinated to enter. This is incredibly documented in American history. It goes all the way back to the 1800s, and this is what I mean when I say he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's a moron. So first of all, this is a landmark case here. Back in I believe this was in 1905 is when it was, and so this case is called Jacobson versus Massachusetts. So it says Massachusetts was one of only 11 states that had compulsory vaccination laws. Massachusetts law empowered the Board of Health of individual cities and towns to enforce mandatory free vaccinations for adults over the age of 21 if the municipality determined it was necessary for the public health or safety of the community. Adults who refused were subject to a $5 monetary fine. In 1902, faced with an outbreak of smallpox, the Board of Health of the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, adopted a regulation ordering the vaccination or revaccination of all of its inhabitants. And so this guy, he's a pastor, Henning Jacobson, he refused. He was given the $5 monetary fine. I don't know if they were actually forcing in this situation to vaccinate, although in U.S. history, there were areas where literally they would come with police officers and literally vaccinate you. That did happen. So that happened. That's American history right there. You know what I mean? That's American history he's talking about. But here's what it says. It says Justice John Marshall Harlan delivered the decision for a 7-2 majority that the Massachusetts law did not violate the 14th Amendment. The court held that, quote, in every well-ordered society charged with the duty of conserving the safety of its members, the rights of the individual in respect of his liberty may at times, under the pressure of great dangers, be subjected to such restraint to be enforced by reasonable regulations as the safety of the general public may demand, and that real liberty for all could not exist under the operation of a principle which recognizes the right of each individual person to use his own liberty, whether in respect of his person or his property, regardless of the injury that may be done to others. So, it says, furthermore, the court held that mandatory vaccinations are neither arbitrary nor oppressive, so long as they do not go so far beyond what was reasonably required for the safety of the public. So this was going on when there was a huge smallpox outbreak that was just devastating areas in the U.S. So this was in favor of the fine for the vaccination. So this was a huge landmark case in 1905. Then there was another one, Zucht v. King, in 1922. It was a case in the U.S. Supreme Court that found the school district of San Antonio, Texas, could constitutionally exclude unvaccinated students from attending the schools in the district. The Supreme Court case has been used as a justification for public school immunization requirement laws in use today. So the city of San Antonio, Texas, enacted an ordinance prohibiting any child from attending a public school or other places of education without having first presented a certificate of vaccination for smallpox. Consequently, Rosalind Zucht was excluded from both public and private schools due to her refusal to receive a vaccination. Zucht sued, asserting that there was no emergency requiring vaccination and that she was deprived of liberty without due process, in the 14th and the 5th Amendment of law by effectively making vaccination compulsory. The Texas state courts denied her claims and she appealed to the United States Supreme Court. In a brief opinion, the court noted that in the previous case of Jacobson versus Massachusetts, the court, quote, had settled that it is within the police power of a state to provide for compulsory vaccination. So it says the court found no reason to question the fairness with which the city ordinance was applied to this case. And it found that the ordinance reflected the broad discretion needed by authorities to protect the public health. It also says that the equal protection violation was just completely bullshit. But this is the argument that's always brought to the courts, and it's happening right now. Indiana state students or something, Indiana University, are trying to bring it to the U.S. Supreme Court. They got, I guess, laughed out of court, I think, at every state court that they went to, state level court they went to. Now they're challenging to the U.S. Supreme Court for vaccine passports. So if these justices who are very conservative are stare decisis justices, they're easily going to uphold the vaccine passports, because in terms of stare decisis and legal, precedent, I mean, this is just 101. And so I understand why people wouldn't know this stuff, because it's, obviously it's case law. So you need to be a little bit nerdy to be into it, but it's pretty important, pretty important stuff. This is it's hard to explain just how basic this is, essentially, how commonplace this idea is. But that's the 1900s. This actually goes all the way back to the 1800s. This is talking about one of the outbreaks that had happened. And so this one says, the country's first vaccine passport system was developed in response in the 1800s. Taylor, who teaches at Smith College, says local health officials or state governments started requiring proof of immunity when traveling or applying for a job. Trained conductors and employers asked people to show either a scar left by a vaccine. That the reason why they did that was because people were forging their vaccination papers and they had no idea how to tell whether or not it was legit. Face pockmarked by smallpox, or a doctor's certificate showing they'd been inoculated. Schools began requiring proof of smallpox vaccinations to enroll, a practice that continues to today for a myriad other diseases. Such measures proved highly effective at controlling infection. It enabled the economy to keep moving, and for the most part, the public accepted it as part of the public health bargain. So that started all the way back, and this is back in the 1800s. So, and then you start to, there's more stuff here. It says, during a series of smallpox outbreaks across the U.S. from 1898 through 1903, many states authorized compulsory vaccination, while other leaders sought to use the power of the public and private institutions to pressure reluctant Americans to accept the vaccine. A Chicago physician wrote in 1901 that, quote, vaccination should be the seal on the passport of entrance to public schools, to the voters' booth, to the box of the juryman, and to every position of duty, privilege, profit, or honor in the gift of either the state or the nation. Employers across the country acted to make smallpox immunity a condition of employment. Factories, mines, railroads, and other industrial workplaces with tight quarters were particularly forceful in demanding proof of vaccination. In 1903, Maine's governor decreed that, quote, no person be allowed to enter the employ of or work in a lumber camp who cannot show a good vaccination scar. Though workers sometimes resisted, corporations and governments usually ensured that they took the vaccine in the end. Social gatherings and clubs, too, sometimes required proof of vaccination in order to attend. When smallpox swept through Kansas City in 1921, one newspaper reported that show a scar has been officially adopted as the passwords to lodges and other meetings. Then you talk about forced quarantines. Forced quarantines are another thing that have been not only done in the 1800s, the 1900s. They were definitely done before independence. I don't know if they were done in the late 1700s. They probably were in different areas. But also it has been upheld in court as well. So the Supreme Court has indeed deemed forced quarantines to be allowed at the state level. It says, after independence, coastal states commonly enacted quarantine laws requiring ships' crews and passengers to remain aboard for a specified period before disembarking. In 1855, Louisiana authorized the Board of Health to establish a quarantine station 75 miles downriver from New Orleans, inspect incoming ships there and quarantine incoming passengers there as necessary. So a lot of areas did this, a lot of it, especially for, basically the way it works is, the only real powers the federal government has when it comes to any of this stuff is under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the federal enumerated powers, the enumerated powers of the federal government. So all that means is they can force quarantines at borders, at interstate, borders or borders with different countries. So that's basically all of the purview that comes with basically any of this stuff for the federal government. The areas that get to do these vaccinations or these vaccine passports, those are the states. And it would be hard pressed for me to see the states really have this power, the local areas have this power. That's really where the power of this stuff lies. So it'd be hard pressed to see judges overturning this. Honestly, even as shitty as the court is now, assuming that they know even the basics, I would assume they do. Legal scholars agree on this entirely, essentially, that yes, vaccine passports, forced quarantines, these are all clearly set out under judicial review. It has been clearly deemed to be constitutional. And again, this is a very perverted view of, quote, freedom, that you have the freedom to fuck someone else over. You don't. And the idea that it's crazy that you should be able to go to a sporting event unvaccinated and fuck other people over. No, fuck you. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? If you want to not be vaccinated and to sit in your shitty fucking life or whatever and just do whatever, fine, it's one thing. But going to other places where other people are, then spreading your disease, not to mention, if you are not getting vaccinated, you're increasing the likelihood of breakthrough cases. So, what Joe Rogan talks about there is fucking hilarious. It's a straw man that he sets up there. The idea of a breakthrough case was unheard of, bro. No, it's not, you fucking dumbass. Everybody knew there was going to be breakthrough cases. A vaccine is not going to turn you into a Super Saiyan. It's going to, if you take it at the right time and you give it 4 weeks for both your doses, 2 for each, you will have significant protection against it. Okay, you're not God. You don't become God after taking it, but you get pretty close as of right now. But as people, and it's something like 80+% for Moderna, Pfizer against infection, and then it's 90+ for symptomatic disease. So if everybody got it but symptomatic disease wasn't happening, then the vaccine has been unmitigated success, but it's still over 80% protection just against infection alone. So yeah, there's going to be some small amount of breakthrough cases, but statistically, as of right now, it's essentially nothing, especially in what's going on right now. And he barely mentions, I heard that they've had better time with it. You're a piece of shit, dude. You're a piece of shit is what you are. Go fuck yourself. It's absolutely insane. And just keep in mind, this is the thing. This is really the biggest thing that the courts have deemed consistently in these cases. The courts have consistently essentially ruled that society as a whole, the common good, of society takes precedent over your personal freedom in a situation like this because, obviously it's an infectious disease and it's going to destroy society as it is right now. People who aren't getting vaccinated are fucking over society. We could go back to normal life if everyone got vaccinated, but because they're not, we can't. So the longer that people don't get vaccinated, the more that the vaccine percolates and it mutates into strains that will cause even more breakthrough cases. And so it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. It's kind of like when Republicans say, government funding for stuff or government-run stuff doesn't work, and then they purposefully make sure that it doesn't work by fucking it over. It's essentially what kind of they're doing now. But what's really fascinating is this is not something that's new. In the early 1900s, very early 1900s, with the smallpox outbreak, there were these anti-vaccination leagues that were created saying this is against human nature. The same shit Joe Dumbass is saying in there has been said in the early 1900s. So, yeah, you guys don't know history when he doesn't know literally jack shit about anything. Vaccine passports are in the blood of the United States, okay? God damn, how infuriating is that? What a dumbo.